Hello, my name's Joe. Welcome to the channel where I help you make better coffee and give you honest reviews. Today I have a very exciting one. We have the Df64, or many other names that they call it. I don't even know all of them. But the Df64 is what it's most well known as in the States, and we're doing a full review today. I have a lot of fun things to talk about with it. It's been a really fun grinder to have as my kind of daily driver for a little while, so I'm excited to talk to you about it. But before we do, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. It helps a ton. There's plenty of you out there. 90% of you that watch are not subscribed, so hit that button and hit the bell icon. All right, so how we're going to structure it, or like a lot of my other videos, we're going to do pros, cons. I'll do a little workflow of making espresso with it, and then I'll give you my final score and thoughts. All right, let's get into it. All right, so the first pro is the aesthetics. I think, generally speaking, this is a really, really nice, pleasing grinder to have in any bar or, kitchen. It's set up pretty nicely. It's very clean. You have, just a kind of a telescopic look to it, and it also comes in a ton of colors. You can select, like, all the different varieties, and also if you don't like any of the colors it comes in, you can even take off the wrap that it comes in. So this comes in black. It's a wrap, like a 3M wrap, and you could actually take it off and you'll have like an aluminum metal look underneath. So if that's something you really want, you could do that as well. So I like the aesthetics. There's a lot of nice things. There's not a lot of metal. The overall look and feel is pretty nice. Speaking of aesthetics, let's move into build quality, which, kind of has to do with the aesthetics. So first of all, everything is pretty much metal on this. I've heard some people talk about how like there's plasticky stuff, but really most of it's pretty much metal. The aluminum around here, even though it is wrapped, is still metal. The ring on here is metal. There's a little bit of plastic on top to show like the different dials, or like the dialing in. And then, all the internals are metal. Really, everything's metal. The only thing that's not is this piece here. This is like kind of a metal plastic combo, and then obviously the plastic dosing cup is obviously plastic. But even to the metal top here, this is metal, not plastic. This is the little top of the puffer. You would expect this to maybe be plastic, considering it's kind of a piece that maybe would go overlooked in a lot of places. And even the rubber here, my wife said she thinks that it would never really break. And I agree with her. This seems to be a reasonably thick rubber. The other thing I really like about this grinder is just the form factor, how small it is. You can kind of put it anywhere and it would fit pretty much in any situation. You could put it next to a Bambino and it wouldn't seem super big. You could put it next to the Lelit Bianca and it wouldn't feel necessarily too small either. It's kind of a really nice size. It's easy to move around. Retention. So the retention on this grinder here is actually pretty low. I've done a lot of grinding on it, and basically every time is like 0.1 grams maybe, and even sometimes it's exactly what I put in. So it's maybe just a fraction of a gram. So I will say that it is a very, very good single dose grinder. The other thing I want to say about the pros here is the price point. I mean, you can't get a 64. This is the cheapest 64 millimeter grinder there is, single doser or not. There just isn't one cheaper, in my opinion, especially at this quality of build. 64 millimeters is a very solid standard for a flat burr grinder, and you can get replacements. It even offers, a lot of places will offer SSP burrs right from the factory, and this does that as well. So it's super nice that you can just go ahead and buy those and have a super high-end grinder with really high-end burrs at somewhere between $400 to $600, maybe $700 at the end of the day. Whereas you look at something, like name your pick in the 64 millimeters, Eureka, any of those, they're all 1,000 plus, and that's, it's not their single doser model either. So say what you will about single dosing, but it is nice to have, whether it's a secondary grinder or your primary grinder. It's nice to have a single doser on hand just to be able to do some different things with it, whether you want to switch back and forth from, espresso to mocha pot to whatever it is. Maybe you want to do filter or French press. So it is nice that you can get that, especially at the cost, like I said, somewhere between $400 to $500 starting out. Okay, so there are two very nice things to say about the adjuster. The adjuster, you can easily make minute changes just by doing minor turns, and the next shot you do will actually show some of those changes most of the time. And then the other thing I would say that I really like about the adjuster is if you decide to unscrew it all the way, you can actually get in there very easily and quickly, clean it all out, or maybe you want to replace the burr set and then put it back together. It's really quick and easy. The only thing I'd say is if you do decide to do that, make sure you make sure the alignment is good on your grinder. And again, even on this grinder, I would say the alignment process is pretty easy. One thing I'll note, if you are making adjustments finer, you will get met with some resistance. So you might need to turn on your grinder to kind of keep going a little finer, especially if you're trying to get into the Turkish coffee grind range. And be careful that you don't actually make the grind burrs touch each other, because you might end up wearing some of the burrs away. It's time for cons. And it's kind of hard to get all of them in there because of the value that this coffee grinder brings. I don't want to hate on it too much because I really like it a lot. But there are definitely cons, especially considering the price. You're kind of expected to see some cons. But I want to stress that for the value, these cons are a little nitpicky and not that terrible. So let's get right into the first one, which is the initial kind of dialing in is a bit difficult. It's hard to know. First of all, you do have to put this doser on and start screwing it in, which is kind of difficult to start threading it nicely. I don't know why, but for some reason the threads don't always line up super easily, and you have to push down on it because of the springs pushing away. So you have to push down and turn, which makes it a little bit difficult. The other thing is once you do get that going, the first initial dialing in is difficult because you don't really know where you're at. It shows like a set of like espresso and mocha pot and all that stuff, but it's kind of useless in a way because unless you get it put in right in that range, it really means nothing. So it is hard to know where you're supposed to be at for the first espresso. Like it might take you 3, 4, maybe even 5 times before you get into that first pretty drinkable shot of espresso. You could maybe do it in 3, but it might take you 5 as well. Static. I know a ton of reviewers have talked about it, but it is still a thing even on this newer model. The static is definitely there. I will say it's definitely a lot better than it used to be, especially in the finer range. So when you're grinding for espresso, you don't have quite as much of the crazy static where it's shooting off to the side. You don't have to do the RDT, like Ross droplet method, to get it off, which is where you spray the coffee beans a little bit with water, shake them up, and then put them in there. You don't have to really do that with espresso, in my opinion. But if you're going for French press or drip, you definitely have to do that. The coffee flies everywhere and it gets like attached to the machine in different places. The dosing holder, basically, the portafilter holder. So I will say that I think it's better than it used to be. Some people say that it doesn't hold the portafilter very well. I've found that it holds my portafilter perfectly fine. I could leave it in there and it doesn't drop. It might not feel super, super secure, but it feels secure enough to the point where I don't worry about it falling off. But I will say, if you are using the dosing cup, some people have 3D printed a piece that actually gets it closer and at an angle. So the reason why that is that static issue, if you're not doing the Ross water droplet every time, it is nice to get a little closer there so the static doesn't get quite as crazy and messy. I think that the company might benefit from shipping one that is angled and closer, but again, I don't think that it's kind of nitpicky. It's not like a huge issue. I think you could literally just pick it up and do the same thing, and it's not a huge deal. So it's not a totally homogeneous mixture. Homogeneous? Homogeneous. Either way, so it's not totally homogeneous inside when you're grinding. It does tend to have all the fines at the last couple of puffs that you do when you're puffing out. And that results, if you're dosing into a cup and then going into a portafilter, you're going to have all of the fines that are on top on the bottom of your portafilter basket, which then results in clogging the holes a little bit when you really don't want that. You're kind of going to slow down your flow more than it needs to be. Whereas if you do dose, and how I do it is I dose directly into my portafilter, so all those fines are actually on top, which isn't really a big deal and probably the way you probably want it to be. Or you could even mix it. So if you do go into the little doser cup here, what I would say is kind of mix it up, do like some type of WDT, or I almost said WWE. Definitely don't do WWE. Anyways, so mix it up, maybe, do a little shake or something and then put it in. Last thing I want to say is it's a little loud for a flat burr grinder. Most flat burr grinders are a lot quieter, such as the Mignon Specialista. All right, so as you saw, I had a lungo. Obviously, I do a lot of lungos. I don't know if you watch my channel, you know that I like to pull a lungo. We had 15 grams in, we had 40 grams out in about 28 seconds. So we hit pretty much all the markers that I like to hit. This is decaf, I will say, so it's kind of late here, 8:03. So I didn't want to drink any caffeinated coffee, but it is good decaf. It was roasted just a couple of days ago, or not a couple, but about a week and a half ago. So it's right in the perfect little zone. So let's take a sip. Cheers. That's good coffee. This is Equator's Coffee decaf espresso. I think it's called like Eye of the Tiger. It's really good. I believe it's organic too. I get nice, sweet, kind of cane sugar smells. Yeah, really, really nice stuff. Had a little licorice flavor up on the back of my mouth. Yeah, kind of caramely. It's really good stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think this grinder is really great. It produces really great espresso. You can make really fine adjustments. You can easily, especially if you have a flow control machine like I have, you can really play around with that flow control. If you want to do some of those Elan shots or super fine shots where you like let it go for like a minute to 90 seconds or so, you can really play around with all that type of stuff. And you could even go, as fine as doing some French press. If you have some guests over and you want to do French press or you want to do a full pot of coffee, you could easily do that with this grinder. It's kind of the jack of all trades, and it's kind of the master of some. It's not the master of none in this case. I think it really is a great espresso grinder for the price. So let's give it a score. So we've decided on a score of 8.8. And the reason why it's getting a high score because one, the price is great. It can do a lot of things pretty easily, and it's a nice form factor that looks great with lots of customization. The reason why it's not quite in the 9s is it has a little bit of room to grow. It is a little loud for a flat burr grinder. There's many other flat burr grinders that are a lot quieter. And the other thing is it's not the cleanest thing, because when you are grinding, you do kind of have all that grinds that go everywhere. So it could get a lot higher with some of those things, and not to mention the other small things I mentioned earlier. So that's the score. Again, please subscribe, comment, like the video. It helps me out a ton, and I will catch you in the next video.